Hello, everyone, and welcome to CinemaTalk, the official Rule of Thirds podcast on rulethirds.com. Today we have a dark, morbid subject matter, but we're going to have some fun with it. It's memorable movie deaths here on CinemaTalk, talking through the great demises of cinema. The ones that stuck with us, the ones that make us cry even to this day. So without further ado, I'm Sean.
I'm Max.
And I'm Larry.
And this is once again CinemaTalk. Sit back and enjoy.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Well, everyone, how are we all doing today? This lovely Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, all right, doing
Stressed
all right.
out as heck.
Okay, well, way to be a Debbie Downer. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's what this podcast is all about today, isn't it?
That's true. That's true. Well, I personally am in a terrific mood, and do you know why? Does anyone guess?
Can I take a
It had
guess?
to do with a movie that came out this weekend.
No, it does not.
No, can I take a guess?
Really?
Can I
Yes.
take a guess of the fact that Game of Thrones premieres later tonight?
Indeed. Game of Thrones Season 4 begins tonight in just a few short hours as we're recording this. I'm incredibly excited. Now, is it just coincidence that the tagline for this season is Valar Morghulis, meaning all men must die? And indeed, mortality comes for us all, including some beloved and not so beloved fictional characters. Of course, this is the subject of today's podcast, memorable movie deaths. We each have three terrific demises to bring up and discuss. We're going to rotate around like last episode. A few things. We will avoid spoilers. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to say the movie before we say the death, and there'll be a little visual indicator when we've stopped discussing that death. So if you haven't seen the movie and you want to be spoiler-free, that's when you can unmute or skip ahead, all that. Also, we're counting any death that's like a death at the time. So if the character comes back, it's still fair game. And if it's a fake out, that's still fair game. As long as at that time it was legitimate and it's really memorable, it's fair game, and we're going to bring it up. With all of that out of the way, Larry, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I'll be kicking us off with a very well-known film. I will be discussing a death from the film of Die Hard. So if you haven't seen Die Hard, we'll have a little. We're gonna have a mark for each film.
And the first Die Hard.
Yeah, the first Die Hard.
First
one.
Die Hard.
Right. And whenever there's a spoiler, we're gonna have the name of the film in red, and we're gonna say spoilers for that film at the bottom of the video.
Yes.
So, and plus, that's the only way you'll be able to be listening to this anyway. So, just for this one episode, keep a lookout on the video. Keep it on the side.
Okay, we get it, Larry. Come on.
Sorry. So, I'm going to be talking about
deaths.
right. So, I'm going to be talking about Hans Gruber from Die Hard, and the reason I find this death so memorable is just because it's kind of funny-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what happens is. For those who don't care, or for those who don't know, essentially, John McClane is on top of the building with Hans Gruber, and then he essentially just falls out of the building. And there's a
he's shot at.
Well, he's shot at, and then he falls out of the building. And it's funny because not only is the green screen effect fantastically hilarious, but it's also just the expression he gives.
Yeah, and it's super slow motion as he falls.
Yeah, as he's falling down. It just when I was watching Die Hard for the first time, I was like, am I supposed to be happy or laughing or sad? I don't know. He's the villain of the film, so obviously he died. Hooray! John McClane wins. But I don't know. Just that I started laughing out loud when I saw his face, and my friends who were real Die Hard fans, they were just like, Larry, what are you laughing about? I was like, look at his face. This is the funniest death face ever. Imagine if a guy died with that face on. Would you really be able to keep a straight face? And they're like, yeah, okay, it's a good point. So, I don't know. That death always confused my emotions.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of Die Hard's thing, though. It jumps between, kind of campy, fun action, full action movie. It's the action movie, Die Hard. And then also it has some legitimate dramatic moments. So the death kind of was fitting, how partially you were saying that is hilarious, but on the other hand, you're like, wow.
That's true.
Kind of epic.
I get that.
So, yeah, the slow-mo fall from the building. Pretty memorable. Of course, that's Alan Rickman.
Of course.
Who is great.
Love
I just want to bring up really quickly. Spoilers for Deathly Hallows Part 2. Or the books, I suppose. His death in Deathly Hallows Part 2, Harry Potter, was really good. And made me really sad.
Why does he always seem to be the one to die?
I don't know.
It has to be Alan Rickman.
Yeah, I mean, he's not Sean Bean level death, but yeah, he has his chances.
That's
Max,
true.
do you have anything about the Die Hard one? You've been a little quiet.
Well, as much as I love Die Hard, yeah, I mean, the death, it's in slow motion. It's, supposed to mean something. It's, it's built to be like the climax, like the relief, like, oh my god, this guy's finally dead. And it's good. And it's good. It feels good to see him die, and it really is a nice little slow motion effect that they shamelessly copied for A Good Day to Die Hard. Oh, I'm sorry, it was an homage. Excuse me.
Let's just not mention.
Once of a memorable death. Some of them death. The Die Hard franchise. Good Day to Die Hard.
That was a solid joke. Well done, Max.
Nice, very nice.
Okay, are we done with Die Hard?
Yes, Die Hard is free of spoilers.
And spoilers for Die Hard. Yes. And begin spoilers for what, Max?
Well, this one actually, it's one that sticks out in my head because it has a lot of like personal. It resonates with me personally, and it kind of scares me a bit. From Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's not a death of any specific character, as much as it is the death of a little red shoe. Or a pair of little red shoes.
Yeah.
Now, this was this is near the very beginning of the movie that established the villain Doom, who many will recognize as one of the best villains of the late 80s in movies. And what he did was essentially, he was trying out this thing called Dip. Dip, if you're unfamiliar with the Roger Rabbit universe or whatever, Dip is essentially the thing that can kill a cartoon, like legitimately kill it. Literally turn it into nothing.
Right, the only thing, because otherwise tunes take all the damage, it's cartoons.
Yeah, so essentially, he takes these, like, Doom, in order to show this Dip, he takes these really cute little shoes,
I think
all these cartoon...
That's one shoe.
Or,
Whatever.
it's I don't remember, but yeah, this little cute little cartoon shoe, and as it squeals in pain as he slowly dips it into the dip.
It's messed up.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
I've forgotten about that. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah,
cartoons are very, very important to me as like from a personal and just like behavioral level. And so seeing that happen really did establish the fact that this guy is not good news.
In
fact, he's probably
nuts.
Many recognize Doom as a
nuts.
great like villain, and he really is. And honestly, the first like thing we really see him doing is killing a cartoon, like legitimately turning it into nothing. That is how you establish a villain.
Mm-hmm. It is very effective.
Agreed.
Definitely.
Agreed.
I don't know how much I have to add. I forgot about that, but that doesn't mean it isn't memorable.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought you were going to bring up... we're still in spoiler territory, so I thought you were going to bring up Doom's death.
Yeah, Doom's death was good. Like, Doom's death is memorable, but it doesn't really like tell me much. It's like, the bad guy dies.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean... I don't know if I'd call Doom one of the best villains from the 80s. I said
the late 80s, so I made it very...
Okay, the late 80s. I guess that's arguable, but personally, I don't see that much depth to his character, in my honest opinion. And I love Roger Rabbit. It's like probably one of the best films.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite films of all time.
One of my top 10 or 20. But I think that death does a great job of just like saying, like, this is real, kids. Like this guy is a murderer, and he will murder people. And that
kids, reality.
Yeah, that really solidifies how real Roger Rabbit really is. Because on the surface of that film, despite it being very cartoony and loony, at the same time it's also kind of dark because the main character of the film, his brother, got killed by an anvil. Was it an anvil?
Yeah, it was an anvil, and it was from that very same
piano.
And yet, and it's
right
hard.
Oh yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was a very large object.
Right. So when you try to bring like, there's comedy and stuff, but at its core, even if it doesn't take itself entirely seriously at times, Roger Rabbit can be pretty dark, and I feel that's one of the better parts of it.
Yeah. You see, I mean, like Doom's death. Like, let's see, how do I summarize this? Doom was like it. People like I hear people, kids of children of the '80s talking about how much Doom scared them as a little kid, and really. Doom scared me too. I mean, I'm a '90s kid, but he scared me. But it wasn't because of like his crazy evil eyes or whatever. It was because he killed such an innocent little cartoon. And the fact that he's like the fact that this little shoe is like squealing in pain. Mm-hmm. That's probably the worst offender. Yeah. Anyway.
All right, and spoiler, Roger Rabbit.
Yes.
There's a cue for you,
Boom.
Larry, while editing.
Mm-hmm.
And begin cue spoiler. I don't think anyone's going to be just like blown away by this spoiler for Lion King. If you haven't seen The Lion King,
boy.
I don't know how to respond to that. But if you haven't and you're listening to this, skip it. Of course, I'm talking about, arguably the most, Bambi's mom's up there, but most infamous death in Disney film.
Tweet,
By the way, which was a runner-up for this podcast.
I brought that one up.
I want to talk about the death of Mufasa in
Of course.
the first third of The Lion King. Now, 7 films have made me cry. I have a list. This is one of them. As a kid, every time I saw this scene, it's just such a powerful scene because unlike a lot of Disney movies where parents die, that's Disney's thing. You don't really see the parents. And it was funny, that actually came up in Frozen. Spoiler for Frozen. Again, it's right at the beginning. The parents are just killed off. You see them a minute.
That's
Yeah.
Anyway,
But again, killing off
first,
parents is something that Disney does. For
and they
some
do it
reason.
usually just to move along the plot or to isolate the character. In this case, you saw their relationship. You saw their genuine father-son bond, and it was handled so really, really well. And that's why it means something. Now, spoilers for Up. Again, it's at the very beginning of the film. That's why Up
You're
works
spoiling
too.
so many films. So many
I know,
films.
but these are all at the beginning, and these are all. And so, what was I saying? Right. Again, that set up the relationship first. So, with Lion King, the stampede scene is one of my favorite sequences in all of film. It's technologically really impressive for the time. It's CGI, and it took. I read it took them 3 years to animate that one scene.
What?
Of course, they had other things going at the time, but it took them 3 years to get that sequence down because it was CGI really early on, and there was a lot of just normal animation. Had to be done so well, and it's just the music is so amazing. It's a breathtaking sequence. I think it's the most memorable part of The Lion King. I mean, even outside the catchy songs, that scene is just really powerful, and it ends with Mufasa's death at the hands of Scar with the infamous line, "Long live the king," throws him off the cliff. It's such an amazing moment because as a kid, you get Scar as the villain, but that just seemed so. It was shocking. Even though Scar was obviously the villain, just throwing him off like that was so cold-blooded. Again, that kind of set the tone. Now, I wouldn't say that Scar really lived up to that tone. He wasn't the best villain. He's amusing. But yeah, Mufasa's death, so powerful. And then when Simba comes up and he goes under his paws, stop it.
Yeah, I know. See, that's what I want to bring up, too. What's interesting about the death... I mean, you said, the catchy songs are memorable. Dude, screw the catchy songs, all right? That is easily the most memorable scene in the entire film, hands down. And there are a few reasons for that. Of course, that infamous line, and he "Long live the king," and he just lets go of his paws.
That's decent.
And it thank you. And he lets go of his paws and he pulls him up and you just see him fall into the stampede of gazelles. But what really hits home... Wildebeest. Whatever. And what...
Gazelles aren't that dangerous. They're little things.
Right. Well... What really sells it though is they show his corpse.
Yeah,
Simba goes to his corpse. He feels comfort, and Scar's just like, I'm a prick. He wasn't that good of a father anyway. I'm like, screw you, buddy.
Yeah, it's really kind of risky if you think about it. Again, going back to Frozen, you just see the ship disappear under a wave. That's that.
Yeah.
It's like Disney does stuff like that. Bambi's mother, it's off screen, just hear the gunshot.
And then it immediately switches tone right afterward.
So, it was risky for them, but I think it really pays off. The scene wouldn't be complete without Simba, seeing it. Coming face to face with the whole, mortality thing, which is kind of the theme of the podcast today. It wouldn't wrap up the same, and I'm glad Disney did that. I know they're, for family, for kids, but they took that risk.
Right.
So
great death.
It is. So, and spoiler on Lion King. There's our first round. We'll try to move a little quicker. Try to move a little quicker moving forward. Just a note to you two. But Larry, what is your second pick?
All right. I will be spoiling Of Mice and Men. Not both the book and the film. So there's your cue. There's a lot of death in the story, but I'm going to talk about the final death, the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. Lenny from Of Mice and Men. Now, me and Max share the opinion that this is possibly one of the most depressing deaths ever.
I'm going to go ahead and say it's one of the most depressing books I've ever read.
Yeah. I mean, when I read the book, I read the book a couple years ago, and I really liked it. It's probably one of my favorite works of literature, at least high school level. I mean, I've barely hit any really major piece of literature, but that's one of my favorite. And the reason is because you set up these two starkly different characters. You have Lenny and George. George is kind of the one who's down, who's grounded. He knows what life's like. He's a bit of a pessimist, but he's really sweet at the center. And then you have Lenny, who's this completely naive, overpowering, and George is like a short little midget dude. And Lenny is very like overpowering, overly sensitive kind of guy. And so to see that last shot in the film, where he shoots him, George shoots Lenny in the right in the back of the head. As he's saying the incredible line. I forgot the exact one. It was like the rabbits. Where are the rabbits, George? That line, and it's like it's just so like you want it to come, and it's gonna come because he has to be stopped. But yet at the same time, like you don't want to do it because he's just such a naive guy. He doesn't really know what he's doing. More spoilers. When Lenny kills the daughter, is it? Or the wife? Is it the wife, Max? Is it a wife or a daughter?
It's the daughter. I'm pretty sure it's the daughter.
Okay, so when he kills the daughter by choking her to death, practically, you're like, oh my, did that just happen? Like, he can't do this. How is he going to stop him? And then George just finishes the job. And I feel that...
Okay, and here's something interesting. Are we supposed to feel, like, sympathetic? Like, when this death occurred, it threw me off guard, definitely. But after... Lenny had literally killed a person and also a puppy. Yes, he kills a puppy.
Yeah,
I mean,
I haven't seen the movie.
I had no idea
shocking.
what to feel. This last part where he he was a good man. He was he had good intentions. His heart was in the right place, but he was killing. He was a killer, and that death really kind of made an impression because how are you supposed to feel in this situation? Is it justified because he killed other people, or is it not justified because he never meant to do any of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like confusing deaths, like emotionally confusing.
Yeah, you're conflicted. You have no you turn to your morals, you turn to what your guts tells you.
My last example, which I won't list now because we're not in spoiler territory. I don't want to put up another warning. I think my last pick kind of has some mixed feelings towards it. At least I did, but I'm trying to think of a perfect example of like a mixed emotions.
There's plenty. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, that's plenty. We'll probably think of one as the podcast goes on, but we should probably
anyway, move on. It's fine.
All right. Well, so
Don't mind me.
Love that death. Easily one of the most depressing in my opinion. It kind of just nails the coffin. It's a nail in the coffin on just how depressing yet real the book and the film is. So that's one of my favorites, easily.
All right. Well, I was pretty quiet because I actually haven't seen or read Of Mice and Men, so that was spoiled for me. But I actually knew that ending. So. No spoilers for Of Mice and Men.
Mm-hmm.
Max, what's the next spoiler territory?
Well, let's see. There are plenty of them. Plenty of spoiler territories to go through. And I'm going to go into the nerd atmosphere on this one. I'm going to go in, and I'm going to put it out there because it's a big movie, and I do want to talk about it because it meant something back when it happened. From Marvel's The Avengers.
Hello, everyone. This is Larry, currently editing CinemaTalk. I was listening through, and I just realized, as I just listened to that one moment, that Max kind of revealed this spoiler a little hastily. So I'm here to just give you another kind of pre-warning. Max is about to spoil a huge plot aspect of The Avengers. So if you haven't seen The Avengers, or most of the films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you probably want to stay away. Come back when the video queue says that we are done spoiling it. Thank you, and hope you enjoy the rest of CinemaTalk.
It's the death of Agent Coulson. So listen, people love talking about the Avengers all the time, and it's because it's a big deal, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I was never the most, the hugest fan of the movie. I still enjoy it, but something that always struck me, something that stuck in my head, was the death of Agent Coulson. Now, Agent Coulson represents, he said it himself, Clark Gregg said it himself, he is the glue that binds this whole franchise together. He is the guy who walks in at pretty much every single Marvel movie and says, hey, you are in the universe. With the exception of the Incredible Hulk, obviously. And when that death happened, it meant a lot more than just, oh no, it's Agent Coulson's death. Not only did it get the Avengers to actually go and avenge his death, yeah, the Avengers is all about them avenging the death of Agent Coulson, if you think about it. And
that's definitely what it's about.
Yeah. But it also meant, does this mean that the universe is over? Is this event so traumatic and so, shocking and so breaking that the glue that binds this entire the universe is gonna, separate? Is it gone?
No.
Now, obviously, with Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he was resurrected somehow.
Yes,
I'm not exactly sure.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure how that happened, but he came back.
I know.
And Well, I mean, though it did kind of defeat the purpose at that very moment where he bit the dust, it said something a lot about how these guys making these movies, like, are thinking. Like, what are they like? What are they trying to tell us with the death of the man who brought the Marvel Cinematic Universe together? And it did tell me that they're going to go a bit more solo on this one, and so far with Captain America: The Winter Soldier coming out a few days ago, apparently they still are. They're keeping the solo stuff. So not only did it mean a big thing for the Avengers in the story, it meant kind of a preview of what Marvel was going to be focusing on after the Avengers.
Yeah, definitely.
Plus, Phil Coulson acting as if, like, what he is, like, Phil Coulson is a very grounded character, and the fact that he was so grounded even in his death was just a lot of, like, was just great character development or great character consistency.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it was a pretty shocking death in terms of, like, I mean, not at the moment, like, he's approaching Loki with a gun, obviously something's going to go wrong, but I was surprised that the movie did it, but I'm glad they did. It was effective, because I like Coulson. He's not like, you know,
he's not like badass, like Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury. He's quick, he's smooth, he's smart.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of the fun. He's normal, which is weird. He's the character that can stand with superheroes, and he doesn't feel small.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know, he just has this weird confidence and likability at the same time.
Yep.
And again, I just want to clarify to everyone, I know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. brought him back, but again, at the time it was legitimate, so it counts for the list.
Yeah, of course. So, Sean, what about you? What about you, man?
Oh, we're moving on to me right away.
Well, yeah.
Cough. Hi.
Oh, well then. Okay.
Could I just bring up one point?
Yeah, I was thinking Larry hadn't really said anything about Coulson.
And Avengers is like one of my favorite films of all time, so I think I should give a small spiel. The Avengers would not be the Avengers without his death. We kind of pointed that out, and you know, we kind of forget with how we just remember the Avengers. The Avengers. Well, they're Avengers. They have to
avenge stuff.
Yeah, they have to avenge things. And people would say, oh, they're avenging, you know, all the destruction that's already happened throughout the last movies. And I'm like,
no.
That's
it's
not
about the death
really
of the audience surrogate. Literally, Phil Coulson is the audience surrogate of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The guy who he basically represents the audience as he goes in and, like, observes these superheroes doing things. When he dies, that connection to us, to the Avengers, is also gone. And that means something.
And then they reestablish it by defeating Loki.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
Well,
yeah,
sort of.
Well,
you know what I mean.
But moving on, we should probably move on because otherwise, because we have a whole discussion about the Marvel Cinematic Universe coming up here on CinemaTalk.
Yes, I wanted to quickly plug that really quickly. We wanted to do it this week. I think we mentioned it last podcast, actually. We're going to do a talk on the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe as we approach the end of Phase 2, but we wanted our Winter Soldier review to come out before, because we definitely want to talk Winter Soldier. Big things about the Cinematic Universe happening in that movie, so again, that will be next week. But
I'm about to go see it, so don't spoil nothing for me.
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay, thank you. Now, moving on. Sean, what do you think?
My second pick is a bit unorthodox, because it's not one death, but rather a consistent level of quality from a single series, and that is, the series being Pirates of the Caribbean. So, if you haven't seen them, whatever. And I just want to talk about, like, pretty much all of the major deaths. So let's just start, and we'll go through really quickly with these. I just want to really quickly run through what I think of each. Of course, at the first film, Barbossa, he's shot by Jack in a really great little bit of a scene. It's not a full scene, but, you know, they're sword fighting, Will's near the chest, and his blood will break the curse. And Jack shoots him as he's still cursed, and he's like, oh, well, that was pointless. You know, the gun he's been holding. Will drops the gold, breaks the curse, and it affects him, you know, as he was there, and it's just a beautiful effect that he opens up his jacket, it's just that white shirt, and the blood just seeps out. It's just such a visual death, and it felt so mixed. Honestly, that's another mixed death, because Barbossa is such a fun character. I love that character. He's just a ton of fun, and so seeing him die is sad, because he's fun to have around, but he is the villain, and it was really cathartic to see Jack Sparrow get his revenge. But it's such a memorable death, and of course his final words, I feel cold. And it's so great because, you know, his whole spiel throughout the whole movie is that he can't feel anything. His only goal is to feel something. And so in his last moments, he does feel something, but it isn't good. It's strangely poetic and really stuck with me. And then, of course, he falls, and an apple rolls out of his hand. Don't know where it came from. So poetic.
I feel that's symbolic. I feel the apple is symbolic of something.
Oh, well, absolutely. It's like, yeah.
I was
like,
talking about this
I
today
never
on. I
figured
was.
it out.
That's funny. I was working on set today, and I pointed out to the actors. Have you ever noticed how people like bad guys sometimes just eat apples when they're being bad?
Apples are good.
And like there was some
Hey,
like,
Snow White. Snow
Yeah.
Yeah,
White,
exactly.
Big thing.
I mean,
Really
just-
is.
It goes back to biblical things. Adam
yeah,
and
the
Eve,
forbidden
of course.
fruit, as we
yeah.
talked about on set.
Right.
Yeah.
So the second death I want to quickly mention, that one was longer, sorry, I'll be quick,
Yeah.
is Jack Sparrow's at the end of Dead Man's Chest. Now, again, he does come back, but it's fair game because at the moment it was legit. I love that he finally faced his fate. You know, he was marked from the beginning of the film. He finally accepts his fate. The Kraken's about to engulf the ship. And instead of trying to run, he turns to face it, drawing his sword, says, "Hello, beastie," and charges right into its mouth as it engulfs the ship. His ship, the Pearl. And it's such a great, awesome moment for him to do that. And it was fun to see the character in more heroic, serious side, when most of the time he's just a pirate.
Oh, man,
So I love that death. And then in the third, I think, honestly, a lot of people overlook it, but I think Davy Jones' death is pretty cool. They stab the heart, and he falls into the whirlpool. I always thought that was really memorable. But by far the best is Cutler Beckett. His ship is caught between the Pearl and the Dutchman. They both open fire, and the ship explodes around him in super slow motion. He just walks through his ship as it comes apart. It splinters around. It's still an amazing special effect. Even though it's a kind of old movie and it's been a few years, we've come a long way. I still think it looks just amazing. All the pieces, all the particles flying around. Again, really poetic, really fitting. His empire, his dream just comes crashing around him literally. He's engulfed in fire. It's brilliant. So I think the whole series as a whole, Pirates of the Caribbean, has been really consistent. You know, with those deaths, they're really great. Sorry, that was a little long-winded. But what do you guys think?
Worth it. They're great deaths.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like, of course, you go into Pirates of the Caribbean and you expect people to die. You expect there to be casualties. But those deaths, you really need to, you've really got to take seriously, and you can't really take, because we take death for granted. Like it's like in, okay, spoilers for Man of Steel. For Jesus, I mean, but so in Man of Steel, we border destruction porn. All right, and
No, we do not border. We're like hardcore.
I don't, Sean.
We're like,
Sean,
if you go to this destruction porn site, you don't just erase your history, you destroy your computer. This is so hardcore destruction porn.
Thank you, Sean.
And sort of Star Trek Into Darkness, but nobody ever talks about that.
Well, no, that was one thing, and that was done by the villain.
Moving on.
That was done by the villain.
We can talk about destruction
Man of Steel
porn.
was the hero doing this stuff.
We
It's
can talk
not okay.
about destruction porn on another episode, but
You know what? I'll write that down. That's a solid
essentially,
topic.
destruction
Okay.
porn, for those who don't know, is just like mounds and mounds of destruction in
Just for the
films.
sake of it.
Just for the sake of there being destruction. And so,
Okay.
in there's like in Man of Steel, countless buildings destroyed. Obviously, people are dead. It's clear. But like that one last death where Superman cracks Zod's neck and he's done. That's like the big death. And when the movie's like being serious. So it's like Pirates of the Caribbean. Several, pirates and several, I don't know the name of them, colonels or whatever, Beckett's crew, they die. But yet at the same time, those
doesn't really
deaths,
matter.
those big deaths, like the ones that mean something, are really important. And I feel that
Yeah.
some people take them for granted, especially in films that are sometimes as silly as Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I think it is. Actually, that's interesting. They're mostly silly, but for these memorable deaths, they get serious, and it pays off, definitely. They knew when to actually be dead serious. So, Max, do you have any final comments on that?
I haven't watched the Pirates of the Caribbean series, so I really don't have anything to say on this matter.
Right. Okay, sorry about that. And spoiler on Pirates of the Caribbean. Moving on to Larry, your final pick.
All right, I'm going to make this quick because this is one
Indeed.
that's pretty well known, and well, not really that well known, but it's very small. It's actually a very minimal part of the movie, but you kind of trace it back. Spoiler for Holes, the film based off of the Lewis Sacker novel.
Classic.
Yes, easily one of the most prolific novels. And it's Sam from Holes. Now you're probably thinking, who the hell is this guy? Like, he's a very minor character. For those who have seen Holes, just a refresher, Kissing Kate Barlow, back before she was Kissing Kate Barlow, kind of fell in love-ish with the guy who sells her onions and fixes her roof and the door and all that stuff, and his name is Sam. He's an African-American. And essentially, one of the guys who's in love with Kissing Kate Barlow, who's not Sam, sees her kissing him, and he gets like totally jealous and burns her schoolhouse down. And kind of akin to Godfather 2, I think. Sam is in his rowboat crossing along the river, and he gets shot in his boat. And just, not only was it a cool death because it kind of reminded me of Godfather a little bit, I like the death because that is the moment. That is the pivotal moment where Kissing Kate Barlow is like, oh, crap. You know, like, oh, damn it. Why did I do that? And then a couple scenes later, we get to the point where Kissing Kate Barlow starts leaving her marks on men and becomes an assassin-esque character. And that one's not really that big. Not many people bring it up because Sam is such a minor character. But I feel that some of the best deaths are the ones that just kickstart everything. Like when a movie's like Citizen,
Sure.
like, okay.
A catalyst.
Yeah, spoiler for Citizen Kane. Jesus Christ, if you haven't watched that one yet.
If you don't know the premise
Yeah,
of Citizen Kane.
seriously.
Most people probably have had it spoiled for you, and
Yeah.
like they have the ending spoiled, but you don't know what the movie is. It's just like
But it's like,
Rosebud's a sled. What does that mean?
Yeah,
It starts with him dying. It's not a spoiler. Go ahead, Larry.
It starts with the death of the titular character, and Rosebud. The classic line. Those deaths, the ones that really like spur events, are probably the ones that are the most intriguing plot wise. And deaths can be interesting emotionally, but like with like mysteries and novels like that, whodunits, like Sherlock Holmes. I'm not talking about the movies. I'm just talking about in general. Deaths that are thrown in there as like a crazy twist and turn, that like helps the plot move forward. That also has to be appreciated too. So I guess I should kind of give credit to Sacker for his novel, but that death I thought was very well executed in the film. So I wanted to bring that up. And spoiler for Holes. Awesome.
Okay, Max, your final pick.
So there are plenty of deaths that I would like to cover now. A bunch of them are just popping in my head, but the one I want to talk about now comes from the movie American Beauty. If you don't know American Beauty, what?
I haven't seen it, and I want to.
What?
All right.
Sean,
This is good. No, this is
you know
good.
what? I'm gonna mute. I'm gonna go out.
Do it.
You guys Skype message me when you're done. I'll come back in.
Okay.
This is awesome. I hope we would get at least one of these on this episode.
Okay.
So
Larry, have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay. You two have fun. Message me as soon as you're done. I'll pop back in and do my final pick. Have fun.
Sweet. Nice.
Okay. So, in American Beauty is all about it's kind of a very, very, very harsh delivery, harsh comment, harsh criticism of American suburban lifestyles. There are bouts of insanity, bouts of repressed homosexuality, bouts of a lot of really serious things, and director Sam Mendes and writer Alan Ball really hit this whole point home with its main character, a character I do not remember the name of. But that doesn't mean that he's not memorable. He's played by Kevin Spacey, and this character, this character whose name is still kind of in the air, he's a father who's just done. He's done. He's done with everything. He hates just everything about suburban life. He hates his wife. He probably hates his daughter. There's nothing about this guy that really screams good human being. He's just...
Wait, are you not saying the name because you can't legitimately remember it?
Yeah, I don't remember it.
His name's Lester.
Lester, that's right. His name is Lester.
I thought you were doing it as like a thing.
No, I just did not know. I did not remember his name. But that doesn't mean he's not memorable. Anyway, the movie begins and he's talking about how he's going to die. And the movie keeps reminding you he's going to die. So it's not really too much of a spoiler that he does die, but it's just so out of left field. You see, at the end of the movie, things finally start turning around for him. Things finally, he starts to get hold of himself. He starts working out. He starts smoking pot. He's enjoying himself. And then all of a sudden, while he's looking at his family's portrait, thinking, hey, maybe there's something more here. Maybe I can turn things around. A gun slowly goes behind him. The camera pans to the wall, and blood splatters right there with a gunshot. And it is just the most tantalizing thing. We knew all this time that he was going to die, and the fact that his death still meant a lot was still meant something. The fact that his death was still a shock, was still an emotional hit, meant that it was a really well-constructed death, even if we knew he was going to die at the very beginning of the movie. So yeah, it's just a very like emotionally like straining death. You knew it was going to happen, and yet you still. It reminds me of what Sean was talking about last week. How he has this idea that sometimes endings have to be predictable but unexpected at the same time. That's kind of what American Beauty has, and hopefully when he sees it, whenever that happens, he'll appreciate that too.
Yes, I think that American Beauty is one of the films that I've still not really truly grasped. I've seen it.
Oh,
once.
there's so much. If you ever go into if you are a film student, if you've never watched American Beauty and you are a film student, you should watch it and like watch it in film student mode, because it is certainly a movie made for both people who like good stories and also people who like good filmmaking. Because there's a lot that the cinematography, the lighting, the music, a lot of it that is said in the narrative. It's just a very excellently constructed movie.
Yeah, Mendes is a great director. And,
and what's funny is he would go on to direct Skyfall,
exactly.
which is the weirdest career turn ever.
I know,
but it was
right?
Still worth it.
That's very odd. But
anyway, what do you have to say on this matter, Larry?
But okay, here's Skyfall, right? Very similar. Okay, spoilers for Skyfall. Right at the beginning of Skyfall, we think he dies. We think James Bond dies. He's seen falling into a river. He eventually, obviously, comes back to life. We know he's not dead, but see, he did a very similar thing. And I feel Sam Mendes kind of understands. Sam Mendes, the reason he's such a great director is because he's very good at like creating a story that entices you and gets you, and when he works with his writers to be sure that you feel for the characters in a way that they work hand in hand together. In American Beauty, I didn't watch it in American Beauty. Unfortunately, was just one of those films that I saw at way too young of an age to get anything. So I feel I'm going to watch it again just for the hell of it at some point in my life. And but I do remember that death, and I do remember just how unfortunate it was. Like it was so.
It was oh my god,
why you know? And I feel that is the beauty to American Beauty, the fact that that it just takes you for a ride, holds you by the collar, and doesn't let you go for a second. Mm-hmm. And that's why
it's a great death.
Should we bring Sean back?
Yep, I'm bringing him back right now.
Come on back, Sean.
I'm back. I hope you guys were secretly like trash talking me the entire time. You didn't say anything about
Trust me, there's plenty to trash talk. I mean, let's move on.
Okay, so my final and spoiler in American Beauty.
Yes.
For me too, which is nice. I'm glad I was able to get through this. And what's funny is I'll have to skip this part, re-listening. Sometimes I'll re-listen to the podcast. I'll have to skip that part. So I will not know for a long time whether or not you were actually trash talking me. My final pick is from Blade Runner. And this is one where sometimes you say, I don't care if it's spoiled. I don't know if I'll see that movie. If you haven't seen Blade Runner, can you just end the podcast? You have my permission, okay? I'm not going to feel bad. We're not going to be upset if you just stop the podcast and skip to the end right now, because it's a really important movie to me. Second favorite film. So, sorry. Blade Runner has a few memorable deaths. It's all the androids. One gets shot in the head, and you see it happen like just an explosion, so that's pretty awesome. One is shattering through glass, and is shot through there, and that's very memorable. And then one is doing all these flips and kicks, gets shot, and just rides around on the ground for a while before it's shot and finished off. Yeah. It's full of memorable deaths. It's an R movie. They're pretty brutal. But, of course, the least brutal one is the most memorable, and that comes at the end. And it is the death of Roy Batty, the leader of the androids and the main villain in the film.
What's his last name?
Roy Batty.
Batty?
Yeah, that's his name. I don't know. I didn't write
Batty, Annie.
Batty.
So, what can I say? It's fitting. I really wanted to end with this Blade Runner death because it's about mortality. That's Blade Runner's theme. It's about mortality. So it's fitting to end the podcast with a discussion on that. And what's funny is I've always maintained, I'll still argue it, that Roy is the protagonist of Blade Runner, not Deckard. Deckard's the antagonist. That doesn't make him a villain. That just makes him the antagonist. And Roy's the protagonist. So when he dies at the end, he shuts down, right? Androids have an expiration date, and he just shuts down. It's not a violent death. It's actually very peaceful. He just shuts down. Genetically, just down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when he does this, it's just such a poetic end. It's just kind of like, it's the only way it could end. It doesn't end with some showdown, a fist fight where Deckard grabs his gun at the last minute and kablam, and his head explodes. That would not fit. Instead, Roy gives up. He gives up this fight. He realizes he's going to die anyway, and he realizes the life that he's so desperate to get more of is ending, and he doesn't have to take it away from anyone else. So he's chasing Deckard, and then he stops. As he's seconds away from dying, he stops. And he gives an improvised speech. And this is something I learned later after watching the film, that his speech to Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, as he's about to die, his final speech was improvised by Rutger Hauer while filming. And it's a beautiful speech. Has some great imagery in it. And it ends with the best metaphor ever. Or simile, I can't remember the difference. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
That would be a simile.
Simile. Thank you for ruining the gravity of the situation with your grammar Nazism. Thank you.
Sorry.
So, that's just, okay, I love this death because, again, it wraps up the theme of the film, and it's so fitting for the character to kind of come to terms with his own death, and it's just such a good metaphor. Simile, whatever. So I don't know what to say. This honestly, I thought I would have a lot more to say about it, but you guys seen Blade Runner. What do you guys think?
I haven't watched it in like 5 years, so I'm gonna have to rewatch it to like have a full-on opinion about it.
Please watch the director's cut.
Yeah, I know.
It does make a difference, you guys.
Yeah, you told me right when we were working out, like we were preparing this episode, that the speech was improvised, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "That brings like a whole new level of respect for that scene."
Yeah, now that you know that. Let's link. Let's put a video to that scene in the description. If you didn't know that, rewatch it and just be super impressed at Rutger Hauer for being
seriously.
awesome.
That guy's
and
awesome.
coming up with that.
That guy's awesome. Anyway, so yeah, death.
That's kind of an anticlimactic finish. I thought I'd have more to say about Blade Runner. I think it was just taken out of the zone because I just sit in silence for a few minutes, just kind of waiting. So I'm sure I'd have more poetic things to say about the Blade Runner death. And spoilers for Blade Runner. This has been CinemaTalk. I had fun with it, even though it was a kind of depressing subject. Okay. It was good. Any closing comments, guys?
Are we going to go over what's on the site real quick?
Yes, I realized that. So really quickly, what's on the site? We did have The Greats on Ewan McGregor and Purview, Days of Future Past, both trailers. But we also have, of course, the CinemaTalk. Last one was television to film adaptations, and a newsreel for the new Harry Potter spin-off, getting a trilogy of films written by J.K. Rowling. So go check that out. And we'll have a recommendation domination for you, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been CinemaTalk. Thank you all for listening. And as always, I'm Sean.
I'm Max.
And I'm Larry.
And again, thank you for listening to us ramble for quite a while on death. Now's the moment you realize that you're 43 minutes closer to yours. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.